Good morning from the Isle of Mull. Today I am going to be catching a ferry from the Isle of Mull over to a smaller island called the Isle of Iona. Some of you may have heard of Iona because it's known for its connections to the origins of Christianity in Scotland. If you're going over to the island as a visitor, you have to go as a foot passenger. It's possible to bring a bicycle, but no vehicles are allowed unless you're a resident of the Isle of Iona. I'll be catching the first ferry over this morning. For the summer timetable, which is what the ferry schedule is on now, the first ferry will leave at 8:35. I didn't need to book any tickets in advance. You can just turn up and pay on the ferry. So let's get going. So here is the ferry area to go to the Isle of Mull. This place is called Finnafort. It's quite a strange spelling, so quite hard to pronounce, but you can park here, but the parking is pretty steep, to be honest. So I've paid for the full day. You have to pay per hour and it costs £9. I don't really have time to go and find somewhere else to park, so I did pay it, but yeah, it seems quite a lot. There's an absolutely massive bus. I'm quite surprised that was able to fit down the roads, all the single track roads to get here. Recently in Scotland the weather has been absolutely amazing, and there really is no better place than Scotland when the weather is like this. The water here is so clear. Finnafort is on the west side of the Isle of Mull, about an hour's drive from Craignure, where the main ferry from the Scottish mainland arrives. If you're coming from Oban, you'll arrive into Craignure after the ferry crossing. Booking a vehicle space on the Oban to Craignure ferry can be tricky, as it often fills up in advance. If you're staying in Oban, several companies offer day trips to Iona and other nearby islands. The ferry from Finnafort to Iona cost me £4.60 return as a foot passenger, and taking my bike was free. The ferry had both indoor and outdoor seating, and on my crossing, the only vehicles on board were a bin lorry and a work van. I have made it to a very sunny Isle of Iona. The ferry took about 10 minutes to come over. There's a lot of work going on here at the pier area. I was just speaking to a local who said they're getting a breakwater put in, which will make it easier to tie up the boat over on the Isle of Iona. My bicycle unfortunately has a flat tyre, so I've tied it up outside the bicycle rental shop. It opens at 10, so hopefully I can pump up the tyre when they open. I'll just explore on foot at first. The Isle of Iona is just 1.5 miles wide and 3 miles long, with around 170 permanent residents. Despite its small size, it welcomes about 130,000 visitors each year. Most people arrive in the island's main village. Here you'll find a post office, a small shop, a school, accommodation, places to eat, and a handful of craft, jewellery and wool shops. In the village, one of the first things you can come across here is this old nunnery, and this was founded in the 1200s and was in use for around 350 years, so that makes it around 800 years old. It says on the plaque there that it's one of the best preserved nunneries in the UK. The nunnery is part of Iona's wider religious complex. It was one of only 2 Augustinian nunneries in Scotland and became known as the Black Church because of the colour of the nuns' robes. Although little is known about the women who lived here, they followed a strict life of prayer and contemplation, similar to Benedictine monks. This nunnery is really impressive, and just near here is the main religious site here on the Isle of Iona. So I'll head there next before the next ferry arrives with more people. It does seem like this island is well set up for people visiting. There were quite a lot of people coming over on the ferry this morning, and I imagine on the next few ferries there'll be even more people coming. As I'm walking, I'm passing some gardens with lots of herbs and vegetables, and these belong to the hotel. So this is the Argyle Hotel Organic Garden, and then there is the Columba Hotel Organic Garden. They also have the menu. That is so cool. This is actually quite a good idea to do this because it makes you want to look at the menu, and then you might go there for lunch. A short walk further is the Abbey. My ticket to go inside cost £11, and you can come and go to the Abbey as often as you like for the duration of your stay on the island. In 563 AD, St Columba, an Irish monk and missionary, arrived on Iona and founded a monastery. From here, St Columba and his followers helped spread Christianity across Scotland. Iona became one of the most important centres of faith, learning and missionary work in early medieval Europe. At the top of the church there's this little room in the turret, and there's a little chair in here. Wow, this is cool. It was also known for its beautifully illustrated manuscripts, such as the Book of Kells, and became the burial place for early Scottish and Irish kings. The abbey later fell into ruin, but was restored in the early 20th century. Today it is home to the Iona community, a modern Christian group focused on peace, justice and community. Because of its religious significance, the island attracts visitors from all over the world who come for pilgrimage, the peaceful atmosphere, and its sacred history. St Columba and St Ninian were the key figures who spread Christianity in Scotland. While St Columba founded the monastery here in Iona, St Ninian brought Christianity to Scotland 100 years earlier, establishing a Christian site at Whithorn in Galloway. I visited Whithorn in a recent video, and I'll link it below if you'd like to watch it. That was really wonderful to see inside the Abbey here on the Isle of Iona. The history and how long it's been here is absolutely incredible. And I was reading that the monks used to pray 8 times a day inside the church, and after the church was restored, they now have a daily service in there. And you get this free audio guide, which is really great. Before I go back and pick up my bicycle, I'd like to quickly say thanks to Incogni, who've made it possible to film this video today. Incogni is a service that I've been using for the last 6 months to clean up my personal data online. I was often receiving unwanted phone calls and emails, and I often wondered how they got hold of my information. Well, the reason is because of something called data brokers. They are buying and selling personal information such as your name, your phone number and your address without your permission. I thought that by unsubscribing from mailing lists, this would be enough to protect my data, but it doesn't seem to be. There's also something called financial data brokers, and they are buying and selling financial information to credit card companies and banks, and this can impact things like if you want to get a loan for a house in the future. I find it really scary that this happens, and it can expose you to a wide range of dangers. You do have the right to be removed from these lists, but the process is very time consuming. That's why I really like Incogni, because I pass over the permission to them to take care of these removal requests, and with the annual subscription they're constantly following up and making sure that I don't reappear on these lists. It's really great that this just all happens in the background, especially when I'm travelling to places like this and I know that it's all taken care of. If you want to give Incogni a go, they are offering 60% off their annual plan. You can click the link in the video description below, use the code RuthAshling at checkout, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. In the cemetery here, it's suddenly got extremely busy. There are people everywhere. It is reminding me of when I went to Edinburgh Castle. So I'm going to go back, get the bicycle and try and head to some quieter parts of the island to escape the crowds. Bike is ready for some action. I'm going to head next to the north of the island. I have arrived at the spot for hiking up to the highest point here on the Isle of Iona. It is around 100 metres. I will leave the bike by the fence here and I doubt anyone will steal it. I think I won't bother with the lock. Dùn Ì, which means Hill of Iona in Scottish Gaelic, takes about 20 minutes to hike to the top. At 110 metres, it offers panoramic views across Iona, Mull and many of the other surrounding islands. Iona's water is piped over from the Isle of Mull, though it was once sourced from a loch in the south of the island. Electricity also comes from Mull, supplied by an undersea cable. I made it to the top of Iona. My goodness, the views up here are incredible. You can see all different sides of the island and the water is so blue. Wow, I can see some amazing beaches up there. That's where I'll be heading next. I have made it to the top of the island, to this incredible beach called White Strand of the Monks. The water is so blue. I haven't seen a beach quite like this in Scotland. It feels like the Caribbean, but the water will be a very different temperature. I'm going to go in for a quick swim. I did bring my things. I don't think it'll be that cold. Let's see. Although this beach is stunning, it has a dark history. In 802 AD, it was the site of a Viking raid that ended in the massacre of 15 resident monks. Just 4 years later, another raid took place at Martyrs Bay, near the village, where 67 monks were killed. This marked a turning point. After that, Christianity and the Catholic Mass largely disappeared from the island for over 200 years. The remaining monks fled to Ireland, taking with them the precious bones of St. Columba and the Book of Kells. Oh, that swim was absolutely amazing. I'm so glad I went in. It is cold, but very refreshing. Very nice. So I was speaking to a local lady actually, and she said that the cruise ships come in here, so that's why the island is so busy today, because of that cruise ship out in the bay. But she's not sure how many people are on it, but it looks like quite a big one. But it really changes a small island when so many people come in at once, because I guess if you come here and you make the effort to get the ferry over to Mull and then come to Iona, you're expecting a relaxing and peaceful and quiet place, but it's quite the opposite. So I think if you're planning to come to Iona, I would definitely try and find out if there's a cruise ship going to be in on the day that you plan to come, because it was the same when I went to Orkney and visited Kirkwall maybe last year or the year before, and there were 7,000 people had got off 2 different cruise ships into Kirkwall on one day, and it was so busy you could hardly move in the streets of Kirkwall. I do understand why people enjoyed going on cruises. You can go to many places on one trip. Personally, for me, I like quiet places. I don't want to be surrounded by loads of people, especially if I make the effort to go to a remote island like this. Obviously, there's many people that come onto the island today. They buy things at the shops. They support the locals living here. So there's pros and cons to the cruise ships, I think. This beach also looks really lovely, but I think the other one looks nicer for swimming because there's less seaweed in the water, so I'm glad I swam at the first beach. I think coming to Iona and staying the night would be a really good idea. There's a few different places you can stay, like glamping places or hotels here on the island, and a lot of people are coming here for the day, either from Mull or they're coming from Oban on the bus, or they're coming off the cruise ships. So if you want to experience Iona without the crowds, I'd recommend to probably stay here for one night on the island. I remember coming in 2017 to Iona, so this is my second time here actually, and it was in the depths of winter. It was December and nothing was open. I just remember walking around, going to all the beaches. No shops were open, nowhere to eat out, and I cooked on a camp stove, I remember. I headed south, passing through the village and making a stop at the Heritage Centre, which is a great place to learn more about the island's past. These days, many island residents work in tourism, while others are involved in crofting. Some make a living as craftspeople, creating handmade goods sold in local shops and galleries. The Iona community also provides employment through various roles connected to the monastery and its activities. As I continued cycling, I kept an eye out for wildlife. I read that you can sometimes spot puffins, shags, oyster catchers and other seabirds, as well as seals and dolphins along the shore. I have now made it to the west side of the Isle of Iona, and there's another beach here, but to get to the beach you have to cross over the Iona golf course. I just saw a man actually playing golf. He was teeing off from the first tee. It looks like a really nice golf course with amazing views, especially in this weather. On my way down here I tried to stop for some lunch in the village, but everyone had started to come off that new cruise ship that had come in, and all the cafes and places to eat were really busy. There was big queues, so I decided to skip having something to eat and come up to the other side of the island because I want to try and see as much of the island as possible because I'm only here for the day. I'm really glad I brought the bicycle with me. After I got the tyres pumped up, it's been great, but it's really helped me get to all the different parts of the island in one day. It would be quite a challenge to do it all by foot, especially if you're wanting to spend time at all the places. I quite like that they don't allow vehicles on the island for visitors. It's quite nice. Everyone's walking or cycling around the island. I've made it down to the beach. This is called the bay at the back of the ocean, and it's more of a stony beach, so quite different to the one that I was at on the other side of the island. And there's no one here. Everyone's at the other beach because it's so beautiful. I'm going to head further up to the north of the island, and there's a bay at the end with a connection to St Columba. I have been hiking for around 45 minutes and the beach that I wanted to find has come into view. I have finally made it to St Columba's Bay, and it's said that this is where St Columba came ashore when he arrived on the Isle of Iona in the year 563. Along the shoreline here you can find the Iona marble, and a little bit around the coast, I think it's quite difficult to access, is an old marble quarry. When I was in the village, I saw inside some of the shops that they were selling some jewellery made from the Iona marble. It was so beautiful. The story goes that after leaving Ireland in exile, St Columba wanted to find a place where he could no longer see his homeland. He first landed on the small island of Oronsay, near Colonsay. When he climbed a hill in Oronsay and saw the distant coast of Ireland still visible, he decided to keep going. He then sailed a little further north and arrived at Iona, where Ireland was no longer in sight. This is where he chose to settle and establish his monastery. I visited Oronsay in another video, which I will link below. Before I head back, I'm going to have something to eat. So I got a scone in the shop as I was passing, and I also have an apple. So I'll have these before I head back. Here is the scone. I think it might be yesterday's scone. Who knows? I'm going to head back now to the ferry. I came on the first ferry this morning at 8:35 a.m. and I'm taking the last ferry back at 6 p.m. So I have around an hour and a half to hike all the way back, pick up my bicycle and then make it back to the village. So hopefully I can make it. I made it back in time for my ferry with plenty of time to spare. I had the most wonderful day visiting this beautiful island and learning about its long history. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.